Now, once that debt is paid, you were paying 25 on this second debt, but now you can pay that additional, now you're paying 50. Right, okay. And so now, once you get that paid off, now you're paying 75.
Right.
Wow, okay, and then it just keeps going, and then
Snowballs.
you're paying 100 or whatever, because you've budgeted for those debts and those bills.
That's it.
And once one is paid off, you're rolling those funds over into that next debt.
Right.
Understanding your cash flow is one of the most important things that you can do as an independent contractor. In my industry and in my field for 17 years, I had to learn the hard way. And one of the things that I did was sit down with a specialist. That person for me was Bobby Grant. And today we're going to talk about 10 budgeting tips for independent contractors. 10 budgeting tips for independent contractor. Sitting here with budgeting bookkeeping specialist Bobby Grant. And this has been a great ride.
Yes.
We have made it to number 10. We've talked about setting financial goals. We talked about identifying your spending habits. We've talked about separating your funds, planning for monthly and annual bills. We've talked about keeping your receipts, reconciling your bank account. We've talked about living and being comfortable with living by a budget. We've talked about cash versus credit. We've talked about paying off your debt. And now number 10, an emergency fund. Setting up an emergency fund. Why is this important? Why is this number 10?
And now this is your baby emergency fund, and it's $1,000 is what you want to have in your emergency fund. And it's important because we all have emergencies. We have a flat tire that we didn't plan on, or we have a root canal that we have to have done that we did not plan on. These are considered emergencies, and instead of going out and getting a loan or getting further into debt,
Using your credit card.
you plan by setting up your emergency fund. And that really is, even though it's the step number 10 that we're talking about here, really it's going to be one of the first things that you want to do. Before you pay off your debt, you want to get enough money set aside in your emergency fund. All your little extra pennies, nickels, and dimes are going to go in that emergency fund to get you set up there, because it's going to happen. You are going to have emergencies.
So, we said this is your baby fund, right?
Yes,
Your baby emergency fund of
Right.
$1,000. But, listening to Susie Orman, she'll say something like, 6 months
Right.
worth of emergency fund or fallback money.
Right.
Yeah, so, what's the difference? Do you believe in that as well?
Yes, oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You want it because you don't know, as a subcontractor or independent contractor, if you break your leg, if you break your arm, if something happens and you can't work for a couple months, you need to have that money set aside in your bank account that's going to get your bills paid on a regular basis till you get back on your feet. But that is something that you need. You need to get your debt paid off. You have to have your baby, your little emergency fund first. You need to be living on a budget. That is something that comes after you get yourself set.
Yeah.
But absolutely need a 3 to 6 month emergency.
And so how do you begin to build that?
So when you do your budget, you need to set aside money each payday, each month, however you want to do it, to make a conscious effort, be intentional to put that money aside in that accumulated funds account, or if you can find one, I don't know if there's any out there right now, a high interest paying account. So it can gain some interest while it's sitting there. And we kind of didn't talk about this, but when you do your budget, you have to have your blow money. That's what we call it, your blow money.
That's right. We did talk about that.
So you need to have some of that money that if you want to go out and get a burger, or you want to go out and have a drink, that
go to the bar, just
it's your money.
Toss money up in the air, make it rain, whatever.
Blow it however you want to blow it. It's your money to blow. So we all need to have that. Because if we don't, then we feel constricted with that budget. We've got to be able to have some free spending in there, but we also have to have all these other things in place too.
That makes complete sense. Well, thank you, Bobby. Thank you so much
for having me.
Sitting down and having this conversation with us and going through these budgeting tips. You and I worked on this and talked about this, but I felt it very important to share with the people in my industry and whomever comes across these videos. So, your knowledge and sharing it with me, and now we're sharing it with others. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. been a pleasure.
It's so important for me to share it with you all and for you to understand that you don't have to be intimidated by your work, be confined by your money, confined by your budget. All of these things work together for the progress of your life.
Right.